What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that absolutely dominated the conversation on NFL coverage today, that has the entire Giants universe experiencing a mixture of excitement about offensive possibilities and skepticism about whether this would just be repeating past mistakes with a coach who already flamed out once as a head coach. I'm talking about the kind of coaching speculation that involves bringing in someone with a proven track record of developing young quarterbacks, but also carries the baggage of a disappointing tenure in Arizona that ended with his firing. This isn't just about finding another offensive coordinator to promote or recycling the same tired names that get mentioned every coaching cycle. This is about potentially hiring Cliff Kingsbury, who's currently revitalizing his reputation with the Washington Commanders and showing he learned from his failures. So, settle in, because what I'm about to share from today's football coverage isn't just about one potential coaching hire. It's about organizational philosophy, about whether coaches deserve second chances, about developing young quarterbacks, and about what it takes to build a modern NFL offense that can actually score points in 2025. Giants faithful, I need you right now. This content doesn't reach the fans who need it without your help. That like button is how we grow, how we build, how we make this the home for Giants fans on YouTube. One click, 1 second, changes everything. If you bleed orange and blue and you love this content, prove it right now. Smash that like button. Let's build this together. Once a Giants, always a Giants. All right, here's the situation that had everyone in football media absolutely engaged today. And I'm talking about veteran NFL analysts who've seen countless coaching searches but still found themselves genuinely intrigued by how perfectly Kingsbury's skill set might match what the Giants need right now. The main story that emerged wasn't actually framed as Kingsbury to Giants is happening, but rather as part of a broader discussion about the upcoming coaching carousel and which candidates make the most sense for which openings based on team needs and organizational fit. When the coverage started breaking down the Giants' situation specifically, when they analyzed what Jackson Dart needs in a head coach to maximize his potential, when they discussed the type of offensive system that would work best with the weapons New York has, Kingsbury's name kept coming up repeatedly, and the arguments for why he makes sense were actually really compelling despite his checkered history. Let me start by giving you the full context that football analysts were establishing right at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding both the Giants' organizational needs and Kingsbury's career trajectory is absolutely essential for grasping why this potential hire keeps generating buzz. The Giants are about to fire another head coach. They're probably going to keep Joe Schoen as general manager, which is its own controversial decision, and they desperately need someone who can develop Jackson Dart and build a modern offense that can actually score points consistently. The coverage was discussing how the Giants' offense has been anemic for years, how they've cycled through offensive coordinators without finding sustained success, how they need fresh ideas, and someone who understands how to attack NFL defenses in 2025 rather than running outdated schemes that don't work anymore. But here's what really has football insiders intrigued about the Kingsbury possibility, and this is where his quarterback development track record becomes absolutely central to understanding why he'd be attractive to the Giants. Kingsbury has worked with some of the most talented quarterbacks in football and helped develop them into elite players, or at least maximize their potential. He coached Patrick Mahomes in college at Texas Tech, and while he obviously didn't make Mahomes into what he became, he helped lay the foundation. He coached Johnny Manziel and got incredible production out of him despite all the off-field chaos. He took Kyler Murray to 2 Pro Bowls with the Cardinals and had him in MVP conversations before everything fell apart. And most recently, he's turned Jaden Daniels into one of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the NFL as the Commanders' offensive coordinator, completely transforming Daniels' game from his rookie struggles into someone who looks like a future star. The coverage dove deep into what specifically Kingsbury does well as a play caller and offensive mind, and here's where you see the fit with Jackson Dart. becoming really compelling. Kingsbury runs a modern offense that incorporates concepts from college football. He's not afraid to be creative and try unconventional approaches. He understands how to scheme receivers open and create easy completions for his quarterback. And he's shown he can adapt his system to fit his personnel rather than forcing everyone into rigid roles. The analysts were discussing how Dart thrives in quick game situations where he can get the ball out fast and let his playmakers work, how he's accurate in the short to intermediate range, how he needs a system that plays to those strengths rather than asking him to be something he's not. Kingsbury's offense would seemingly be perfect for maximizing those abilities. What the football coverage kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why the Giants might seriously consider Kingsbury despite his Arizona failures, is that he's already been a head coach in the NFL for 4 seasons and doesn't need to learn the job on the fly. The analysts were making the point that going from coordinator to head coach is a massive jump that many coaches struggle with. They suddenly have responsibilities for the entire organization rather than just one side of the ball. They have to manage a much larger staff. They have to deal with media and ownership pressures they've never experienced. Kingsbury has already gone through all of that. He already knows what the job entails, and after being fired by Arizona and spending time as a coordinator in Washington, he's had the opportunity to reflect on what went wrong and how to do things differently next time. The panel spent extensive time analyzing Kingsbury's tenure with the Cardinals and what lessons can be learned from both his successes and failures there. And this sparked really interesting debates about whether past performance predicts future results. Some analysts argued that Kingsbury proved he's not cut out to be a head coach, that he went 28-37-1 in Arizona and got fired for good reason, that his defenses were consistently terrible and he couldn't build a complete team, that hiring him would just be setting the Giants up for more mediocrity. Others countered that Kingsbury actually had some real success in Arizona, including an 11-6 playoff season in 2021, that the team fell apart partly due to Kyler Murray's injuries and DeAndre Hopkins' suspension rather than purely coaching, that Kingsbury has clearly grown and evolved based on his work with Daniels in Washington. The debate was genuinely split, with valid points on both sides. What I found particularly fascinating during today's football coverage was when they started discussing the divisional familiarity angle and how Kingsbury, being the Commanders' current offensive coordinator, gives him unique insight into the Giants' biggest rival. The analysts were pointing out that Kingsbury has been game planning against the Giants twice per year. He understands their defensive personnel and tendencies. He knows the other NFC East teams intimately, and that familiarity could help him hit the ground running rather than needing a year to learn the division. This isn't some coordinator coming from the AFC who's never seen these teams. This is someone who's been competing against them directly and knows exactly what it takes to win in this division. The show also explored what Kingsbury's offensive system would mean for the Giants' current weapons, and whether guys like Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Theo Johnson would thrive in his scheme. And honestly, this was one of the more exciting parts of the entire discussion. The analysts were breaking down how Kingsbury loves to use multiple receiver sets, how he schemes ways to get his playmakers the ball in space where they can create after the catch, how he understands how to attack different defensive looks with quick adjustments at the line of scrimmage. The coverage was showing clips of how Daniels has been utilizing Terry McLaurin and the Commanders' other receivers, drawing parallels to how Neighbors could be deployed similarly, discussing how Robinson's quickness would fit perfectly in the slot, talking about how Theo Johnson's size and athleticism make him ideal for the seam routes and red zone targets that Kingsbury loves. What really struck me during the football analysis was when they started discussing whether the Giants should even be considering offensive-minded coaches, or if they need to prioritize defense, given how historically bad their run defense has been. Some analysts argued that with the number 2 pick in the draft potentially available, the Giants could take a defensive tackle like Peter Woods and pair him with Dexter Lawrence to fix the run defense, then hire an offensive coach like Kingsbury to maximize Dart and the skill position players. Others countered that defense wins championships, and the Giants should hire a defensive-minded head coach who can fix that side of the ball while finding a good offensive coordinator to work with Dart. This fundamental disagreement about organizational philosophy was getting pretty heated on the panel. The coverage also spent significant time analyzing the draft and how it connects to whoever becomes the next head coach. And this was interesting because it affects how you evaluate coaching candidates. If the Giants are picking second overall, and there's a defensive tackle prospect like Peter Woods, who can be a transformational player, do you take him and build around stopping the run? Or do you take the best offensive weapon available to help your young quarterback? The analysts were going through Mel Kiper's big board, discussing players like Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate, who are elite receiver prospects, or Caleb Downs, who's a playmaking safety despite positional value concerns, or Spencer Fano, who's an offensive tackle that could protect Dart for the next decade. The point was made that whoever becomes head coach will have significant input on that draft pick, and it needs to align with their vision. One aspect that got really interesting discussion was whether Joe Schoen remaining as GM while hiring a new head coach creates complications and power structure issues. The analysts were discussing how it's unusual to fire a head coach but keep the GM who built the roster and hired that coach, how it creates questions about accountability, how the new coach might inherit a roster that doesn't fit his system. If Kingsbury comes in wanting to run his offense, but Schoen drafts a defensive tackle with the top pick because he thinks defense is the priority, that's a potential conflict that could undermine everything. The football coverage was suggesting that maybe the Giants should clean house entirely and let a new GM and coach build together from scratch. Listen, after hearing all the football coverage today about Cliff Kingsbury potentially being a candidate for the Giants' head coaching job and how he'd fit with Jackson Dart's development needs, I'm absolutely torn about whether this is the right move or just another example of the Giants making predictable, mediocre choices. On one hand, Kingsbury's quarterback development track record is undeniable, and what he's done with Jaden Daniels this year proves he's learned from his Arizona mistakes and grown as a coach. His modern offensive philosophy would be perfect for maximizing Dart's strength. His familiarity with the NFC East is valuable, and his experience as a former head coach means he wouldn't need years to figure out the job. On the other hand, he's a retread who already failed once as a head coach. His defenses in Arizona were consistently awful, which raises questions about whether he can build a complete team. And there's always the concern that what works as a coordinator doesn't translate to being the guy in charge. If I'm the Giants, I think you have to do your due diligence on Kingsbury and seriously consider him. But you better make sure you hire a defensive coordinator who can actually fix that side of the ball, because Kingsbury has never shown he can do it himself. This is a high-risk, high-reward hire that could either unlock Dart's potential and turn the offense into a juggernaut, or could be more of the same mediocrity that's plagued this franchise for the last decade.